When one door closes, another one opens, and on this episode, we're hanging all of our interior doors. We're talking fire-rated, solid core, and heavy doors. But with the right tools, a little bit of know-how, and plenty of trial and error, even us wannabe carpenters can get a door hung plumbing level every now and then.
Whoa.
Are you falling asleep?
The dog just ripped major out.
Something's different.
Hey, Georgie.
George. Today begins the installation of our interior doors. We went with solid core interior doors in this 2-panel shaker or craftsman style, whatever you want to call it. They're from Reeb Millwork. They're a company not too far outside of Philadelphia. Pretty big millwork shop. They make a lot of doors and stock a lot of stuff. And we got them through our local Reeb dealer. In this video, I'm gonna walk through the whole install of all of our doors. We actually don't have that many of them. 2 down here at the garage level and 4 upstairs, including the entry door at the top of the stairs. I'm gonna be using kind of a cool tool that I heard of several years ago through social media, I believe. And we saw their booth at the IBS show in Vegas this year. It's a small American business and we were happy to feature the product on the video. So I'm gonna be using this in the install of all our doors, and I have done one already, the utility room door, just to sort of get my feet wet off camera. It made it a lot easier having this tool and being able to maneuver the door with just one person. The door stud's pretty simple. It's just a set of wheels, really, that lock on the bottom of the door panel. And it just gives you 4 points of contact with the floor so you can easily swivel it around, move it. The adjustment knobs can raise and lower the whole thing or tilt it one way or the other so you can get it nice and plumb in the opening without having to do any support otherwise. So let's get going on this one. Take our straps off. Now these are MDF 3/8 inch thick panels on here, and the surround is a wood style and rail frame with a 1/8 inch MDF skin, which allows it to take paint really well. And actually they weren't that crazy expensive. I think this door was about $250. But because we only had 6 of them, we could afford to do something like this over the more builder grade option, the hollow core. This is just a little bit nicer of a door. And actually on the bathroom and to both of the bedrooms upstairs, we upgraded this standard 3/8 panel to a 5/8 inch thick panel. So just a little bit more mass, which helps with the sound deadening, which you're gonna want for those rooms. So I'm borrowing a little bit of a trick from the This Old House door install video. Couple plumb marks. I just want to see how out of level this slab is. Excuse me, level marks, not plumb marks. But measuring down to the floor from each of these should give me roughly how much of a difference in jamb height I'm gonna need. The 64 1/4 on this side. It's just over like a 1/16 off, I would say. I'm not sure if that's gonna warrant any difference by the time everything's said and done. These doors come with about 1 inch of extra jamb below the door slab. So I don't want that full 1 inch thick gap. I don't really need it. Typically you'll have a big gap if you're undercutting for like HVAC return or something like that where air needs to flow underneath the door, but I don't have any supply or return vents in this little bathroom. It's gonna just share the same temperature as the garage around it, and we're not trying to keep this space conditioned. We have this mini split up here and this door is gonna be open most of the time anyways. So what's more important is keeping the sound inside the bathroom and keeping that gap to kind of a minimum. I think I'm gonna shoot for around a 1/2 inch. That way, over time, if something does settle, we're not dragging on the floor. The concrete is our finished floor surface. We are gonna put epoxy on, but that's gonna add a negligible thickness, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm gonna shoot for a 1/2 inch at the bottom. And because we're on bare concrete, I'm gonna leave this up around 1/8 of an inch. I'm just gonna set it on some 1/8 inch shims. That way, this never wicks any moisture up that might be in the concrete, or if there's ever a spill or something in here, my door isn't pulling that moisture up. So we'll have a little gap here, and I still want that 1/2 inch gap here, but that 1/8 inch is gonna be part of that gap. So I'm gonna cut these jambs to 3/8 of an inch below the bottom edge of this door. I'm gonna set it on its side and just run the circular saw across it. So that's measuring 1 3/8 right now. I want it to be 3/8. I'm gonna burn 1 inch, 1 2 3/8, and I'll set it up 1/8. That'll give us our 1/2 inch. Repeated that on the other side, and now we are ready to get this thing in the opening. Now I'm gonna be using these little door brackets. One set of these was supplied with the door stud kit. Theoretically, it should be a lot quicker than shimming. We're gonna give it a shot. Utility door, I did do the old fashioned way with some shims, and that seemed to work out okay, but it did take a little bit of time to get everything nice and plumb and sitting just right. The idea behind the brackets is one goes at each hinge. It's got these little tabs to help kind of locate it on the door. And there's 4 screws that hold this thing into the jamb. All right, got all those installed and realized that the first 3 I put on were backwards. And this was facing the inside of the door, so I wouldn't be able to wheel it into the opening, but now we are ready to go. Next step to get this guy plumb is to draw a plumb line about a 1/2 inch from the jamb here on this side. We're gonna line the brackets up with that line. So I'm just gonna use my long level for that, and then we're ready to go. Just gonna draw it real faint. I think I'm gonna have to crank the height on this way down. Yeah, way too tall. Nice thing is, it's as easy as just turning these knobs. Pretty darn plumb. Yeah, it's just about perfect. Now that's sitting in the opening and the door stud's holding it plumb, the idea is to make sure that it's plumb. Pick one groove in this bracket, line it up with your line, and then do that on the other 2. And in theory, you should have a plumb door if you do that. Now in a perfect world, I would have done this from the inside of the bathroom, but there's no light in there currently, so it was easier to do it from the outside. However, I can't see the reveal around the back edge of the door right now, so I'm gonna have to open the door, get in there and take a look at it, maybe do some holding with some shims or something to hold it in place temporarily while I screw this guy in. Pre-hung doors usually come with a little plastic piece that holds the slab to the jamb, so I'm taking that out to open the door. When you do this, that side of the jamb falls down and makes contact with the top of the door, so I used an 1/8 inch shim to lift it back up and create some clearance to roll the door open. I just bent these guys back so they're ready to get screwed in. Now I just need to close the door, check my adjustments, we'll be good to go. Oh geez, it's getting dark in here. That's better, got our flashlight anyway. All right, when I play around with this, I can get a pretty decently even reveal, except for at the very bottom. It's not rubbing, but it's really tight down there, and the problem is the rough framing. It's just kicked out a little bit at the bottom edge. Well, I didn't want to have to do this, but I'm gonna need to get that reveal right. That sliver right there has got to go in order to get the right reveal. So pulled it out, scraped some drywall off, and I got my planer out. I'm gonna run the planer alongside and then use the multi-tool at the bottom to clean that up the best I can. It's always something. This thing makes such a mess too. One large pile of wood shavings later, we're about back to where we started. I got all the brackets in inside and out, and everything seems to be looking okay. I think I need to do a little bit more adjusting. The reveal at the bottom is just slightly bigger than it is at the top. That's after I took the door stud tools off and the door is able to sag a little bit under its own weight. I definitely still think I'm gonna throw some finish nails in on the jamb side with some shims behind it just to stiffen that side up a little bit. And on this side, I'm gonna put some screws behind the hinge plate. A lot of folks replace that center screw with a long screw. First of all, I don't have long screws that have the same nice black finished head. Second of all, when I take this door off to paint it, I don't want to have to be keeping track of all these different long screws and where they need to go. So I'm just going to put a countersunk screw underneath the hinge plate, one at a time, so I don't have to mess with the alignment of the door or anything. Now we'll hold this hinge side in really securely. No one would ever know. Shims are all trimmed off, screws are all tightened in. I'm a little bit worried about these. They claim that they're not going to interfere with the trim at all. And that would definitely be true for the screw, which is kind of countersunk in there once you tighten it down, but it sends the wings of the metal up a little bit to probably about 1/8 of an inch off. So if this is flush with this, I don't know how it's not gonna interfere, but I will cross that bridge when I come to it. Worst comes to worst, I can always route out a little back section of the trim to sit over top of the brackets. So there she is, the second door of 7 to install yet, not including the barn doors and the laundry bifold barn door, which is gonna be an interesting setup. So I'm gonna quick put the handle set we got on this. We're getting married in like 3 days. The brunch is here the next day. We're gonna have 170 people here. We got a porta pot. We're not using this bathroom for all those people, but we wanna be able to at least show some of the doors and the handle set. So I'm just gonna quick time lapse through this. I don't really have time to walk through it. It's a Schlage handle set that sort of matches the ones that we already have, except with a slightly different trim, a round trim instead of the square. Really like the look of them, and that's what we'll be using all upstairs too. Now, the real reason we went with round plates on interior doors is because we realized that over time, the rectangular plates on the exterior doors were loosening to the point where they could twist. So we didn't want to be constantly fixing and retightening crooked plates on our interior doors too. Our next door is a little bit special because it's actually our entry door from the garage, really step area, into the living space. So 2 things. A, this has to be a fire rated door, and that's pretty standard building code. Second, this is a gasketed or airtight door. So it's got weather stripping all around it, and that allows us to make sure we're keeping separate air spaces between the garage and the living space. We did do a slightly different threshold on this than most exterior doors. This is, I think it's called like a commercial door type threshold or a handicap accessible threshold, where it's just a flat aluminum sill and then the door sweep just glides over top of that, where in most exterior doors there's actually a ledge, whereas this one is a little bit more low profile. Being that this isn't a true exterior door, we don't really need that weatherproof ledge, so we just opted for the thing that's easier to walk over, in our case, the sweep. So last night I did some prep work on the foundation for this door. I just put a piece of 1/4-inch plywood down, glued it, screwed the heck out of it with a bunch of drywall screws, and then also ran a bead of Lexel around the base of this plywood just to keep dirt and dust from accumulating in there, and also to do a little bit of air sealing.
Gotta be where the action is, huh? Are you falling asleep? You look pretty tired.
So this should give us a solid foundation for the door that still won't be flexing at all. I considered using just a scrap piece of flooring, but there is like a thin piece of foam below that. Might not have been a big deal, but figured doing something a little bit more rigid would be better. And this plywood is actually about 1/16 of an inch thicker than the flooring. So sill will sit up just slightly above the floor. We'll fill that gap with sealant. In the case that we ever go to replace the floor someday, it will be nice to not have to dig out from underneath this sill. The floor should be able to slide pretty freely underneath the aluminum sill, which is also important because I'm obviously on raw flooring out here. We still have to do this landing floor, and we need to be able to slide that up underneath the aluminum threshold. So by putting this plywood down, the door will be just slightly elevated. Most of the reason this is a fire rated door is because it's solid core. Actually, all of our doors are solid core, but this one specifically carries the fire rating. I don't know if it's the material that's used in it or what, but it's a 1 3/4 thick solid core door, and that means it's pretty darn heavy. It's the heaviest door by far that we have. So luckily, my helper is here to help transport this thing over there. And we'll have to rotate it because the sill side goes outwards. It would be helpful to have one person on both sides, one person on each side.
But let's get it closer first. We just gotta make sure. Maybe we should put cardboard so we don't scrape the floor.
Okay, let's just move it onto the cardboard and then we'll slide it. It's gonna be pretty tight, but it'll go.
I don't want to smush my hand. I'm gonna push it with my foot.
Go back and forth.
Georgie's locked out.
This is tighter than I thought it was gonna be honest.
It's gonna be hard to get shims in that. Georgie on the other side. Georgie! You can see his little butt through the hole. He's waiting. He's like, wait.
He's like, wait a second.
What happened? Did they install a wall?
Something's weird about this. I swear I could come through here just a moment ago. Now something's different.
Georgie, buddy. Hey, Georgie.
George.
Georgie.
Oh my gosh, someone's at the door. Hello?
Buddy, I guess you can come in. Hello!
All right, we pulled it back out. This is a lot tighter to the opening than I thought it was gonna be, and this drywall just protrudes just a little bit right here because they didn't use the router because of the Sega tape. So I'm gonna cut this back so that we are not impeded at all by the drywall. We can slide shims clear through both sides. This side is sticking out a little bit too. So that was a check I should have done, didn't even think about it, but the drywall caused a little issue, so we gotta redo that.
And this is your sign to not forget to put an outlet at the top of the stairs. It makes it a lot easier for vacuuming.
Okay, take 2. 1, 2, 3. Wow, that went in so much easier with that extra room. Jeremy, rough openings back, so that's moral of that story. So we're in, and to get this thing plumb, this top has got to come over just about a 1/4 inch, basically fill that gap of daylight that you see there. And to do that, you can't see it, but on the other side, right in that top corner, Elena has an air wedge that I bought for this purpose after doing a couple doors and struggling with shims trying to get this perfect. The air wedge is just a ball with a little inflatable bag on it, and it's real flat. And with a few pumps, it'll knock this whole door one way. So go for it, Elena.
All right,
Hit the ball.
let's do it.
See if we can get a close up of it moving.
I see it moving.
I don't see anything in here yet.
I see it over here, it looks like.
It should be moving the whole door. Okay, she did not have the valve closed. So take 2 with the valve actually closed. This should do a little bit more.
Ready?
Yep. Okay, that is noticeable.
It looks like it's tilting the door though. We gotta be careful. My back part came out.
We threw a set of shims down there, up here just to hold the gap, and then up here to hold the reveal of the door open, because this was binding, the door was binding on the frame without this guy. Now Elena's gonna put the air wedge over in this gap and push this side over. I'm going to hold this up against our hinges to let her know once this gets plumb. All right, let her rip. Slow, slow. Does not need to go much. Let me check the bottom level. Okay, give me another pump. I think that's as good as my level's gonna get it. Isn't that air wedge nice?
Yeah, the thing's really cool. How much was it?
$20. All right, everything was going good until we were about ready to start shimming this right side permanently, and I noticed this big old gap right here underneath the sill. So Elena went and put the level on the outside, and because we have this door plumbed, the sill right now is perfectly level. Our floor, however, is not perfectly level. It's a good, probably, 3/16 to 1/4 inch. Yeah, Elena says a 1/4 inch. I should have definitely checked that before putting the plywood down out there, because then I could have shimmed that plywood to level, but I didn't even really think about it, that this door, because it has a sill, it needs continuous support under that sill as well. Whereas in a regular interior door, it doesn't really matter that much because there is no sill. You just, have the floor underneath the door. So I think this is gonna have to come out for a 3rd time, but hopefully 3rd time is the charm. We're gonna have to figure out some way to shim up this one side so that this black aluminum sill has something to rest on. I'll probably just have to put a few different pairs in there, fasten them down, and then we'll go from there. Well, I'll be darned. There she is right there. There's level, there's not level. Level, not level. Upon further investigation, I've also found that the sill is fastened just a little bit higher to the jamb on this side than it is on that side, which combined with my 1/8 of an inch out of level floor makes it even worse. That's why there was a full 1/4 inch gap or so over here. So I'll take credit for half of that, and then I'm giving the other half of that to the manufacturer. Houses can just be painfully tedious sometimes. Just gluing these guys down with some Lexel to keep them steady. That is level. Level and solid, no rock. These are both 1/8 inch stacks. That's a 16th, and then it levels out right here. This is actually level on this side, and then it dips off. I really don't know why that is. Maybe this is an LVL under this stair, so something to do with that, but it's just a pain more than anything. 3rd time may or may not be the charm. Only one way to find out.
Are you sure you don't want help?
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get this, but we'll see.
You're running into the shim box. Okay, just don't drag it on the floor, please.
Problem is I can't really see.
Over to your left. Over to your left.
Yeah, if you could help guide it over there, that would be wonderful. All right, let's repeat the same process. Get our hinge side plumbed and worry about everything else. Okay, now you're good. Good. That clamp really helps holding everything together. It's a good idea, sweet baby. Several shims later, that is, I think, about as good as we're gonna get. I've got shims holding the reveal between the door and the jamb. We have a shim at each hinge, 3 on this side, and just 2 temporary ones at the top. We won't leave those there just in case there's ever any settling or anything. We don't want the door pinching down. I'll go to the other side, and these are what I'm gonna be using to fasten everything in. They leave a really small circular hole that should be pretty easy to fill. And there she is. George looks a little bit scared, but I think he's ready to test it out. I put a fastener in all 6 hinge locations. Still got our air wedge up here. Is it open now? There she is. Well, upon closing it, yeah, we seem to have some interference here.
Oh man.
Thing is tight. I will say this door is so tight in this frame. Like there's not nearly as much clearance as there was on our other exterior doors we got. All right, after playing around with it a little bit, we got it as good as I think as it's gonna get. It's no longer hitting on this side. I put a pretty heavy duty deck screw behind the weather stripping on this one to pull this side in. That helped a good bit. The reveal is nice and even going top to bottom, but it's still very thin. Like that is just barely not hitting. But if you look on the other side, the reveal is just as thin down here. It gets just a hair bigger when you get to the top, but it's not much. It is tight as a tick. I don't know if that's a fire door thing or what, but I really hope this thing doesn't expand in the summer because it's winter right now and I'm gonna have to be sanding the edges of the door down to fix it after this. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the handle on this just temporarily, and then we can use it for a few days and just see what happens, see if anything starts binding or anything like that. Of course, all the hardware for all these doors is gonna have to come off to get them painted because this is just a primer finish right now. I can't really paint them in place. At least not well. So the doors are gonna all come off their hinges. I've been debating on how I'm gonna paint the frames, whether the rest of the interior doors, I paint those downstairs before installing them, or whether I paint those in place just with a brush. But I'm not quite decided on that. But this, because it had the black silt anyway, I decided we're gonna have to paint that in place with a brush. Unless I can rig up some sort of crazy spray setup that doesn't have any overspray. We're gonna have to adjust that because that's not latching. This is just a regular privacy doorknob, just like you can see on a bathroom, just because we didn't really want to key it from the outside. We have all keyed doors on the actual exterior doors, so we figured if we wanted to lock this, we could, but we don't need to usually. When I installed this strike plate, first I put it all the way to the recess that's grouted out for it because that seems right? Couldn't get the door to latch at all, so I was like, all right, maybe I'll push it back. I pushed it back till this black tab hit the wood. Barely was able to get another set of holes drilled because it's right on the edge of my first set of holes. Here's what that yields. Still doesn't latch unless you really push on it. Now it's latched. Basically have to slam it to get it to latch. So I still need to shift this over a little bit, but this is a little bit of a predicament now because I'm now making my third set of holes very close to one another, and I think I'm gonna have to fill in the first two. So this is a good life lesson learned the hard way, and one that comes with some experience in doing doors. I've only done a couple of these things so far. I routed out a little bit more of a recess so this little tongue on the black plate can fit back in there a bit more, but upon checking this, that's about where it needs to be, and there's no way I'm getting another set of holes right next to that existing one. When you tighten the screw down, it wants to be there, but where it really needs to be is like there. So it's just a fraction of an inch, and that's what it takes to get these doors to latch right. Shouldn't be anything some wood glue and some splinters can't fix. Might as well trim these while I'm waiting for this to dry. Will third time be the charm? Please latch, please latch, please latch. Huzzah! Yes. It shuts normally. Yes, that is totally normal. Totally appropriate amount of force to close the door. Hallelujah. The story of this door is almost over. Last thing to do is this sill. Got 3 screw holes in it, which of course they don't give you screws for, so I'm just using some black fine thread drywall screws for now. I might replace them a little bit later because they are not quite the right size. The head should be a little bigger. But this thing had a lot of flex in it, and I just spent probably 30 minutes dealing with a lot of shims, getting them up underneath and just right so that the door still closes properly, but this thing doesn't have any more flex and it's nice and level too. So the sill is still level this way. It's pretty much level all along the end. Not quite perfect, but it's gonna be good enough. And now I can finally run some screws in through this thing. And hopefully at the end of the day, the door still closes. It really annoys me they did not provide the screws for this because these are just a little too small. So the black anodized finish has a ring of non-finish around the screw heads because they don't quite fill the hole in perfectly. Okay, I think it's better. It's better than it was before I put the screws in. Yep, we'll live with that. One of the features that I had not mentioned with these fire doors is that the hinges are a little bit special. They're self-closing hinges. Comes with these little pins, tiny little metal pin, and there's a couple holes in the hinge barrels that you can just put these things in. And as you can see right now, the door is in fact hung plumb. So in any position, it will just stay where it's at. It's not trying to close itself or open itself. It just stays. But we're gonna throw these things in and see how it changes. There's a spot for an Allen key at the top to help you line up the hole. Slip that guy right in there. And now that's in. Now with all three of those in, let's see what it does. Yep, so there's torsion springs in each one of these barrels, and it just pulls the door shut slowly. Now with the rubber strip on the bottom, there's no way it's going to like truly shut it, but I guess it just, you know, it mimics the door being out of plumb and just wanting to shut itself. And this is a building code requirement for these garage house doors to do this. However, I've heard this is the most popular thing that gets changed very shortly after inspection. We're gonna have them in there for now though. And honestly, after using the self-closes for a while, we actually like not having to think about closing the door behind us when coming inside. So they're gonna stay for us, and obviously that's safer in the event of a fire as well. Oddly satisfying. This is not technically for this application. We used it around some stone veneer, but let no tube go to waste, as they say. I think the base of this is similar to Big Stretch, which is what I'll be using for the rest of it. So I think it'll work all the same. Oh yeah, that's gonna be a beauty. And it's gonna look like it's a mortar joint. Getting adhesion on 3 sides makes caulk perform a lot better. So having that backer rod in is kind of crucial. Here's the part where you have to use caulk. You can't even fit a backer rod in there. It's just tight up against the jamb. It's wild that you can actually feel the air flow at these little cracks around the doors. But once you put this foam and caulk in, boom, it's done. All air sealed up on this thing with some combination of Big Stretch, Moreflex, or expanding foam. It's got a bead on both sides. There's definitely no air coming from around that door. I'll be caulking at the sill plate too eventually. I'm just not bothering with that yet. Not dealing with it now. I'm done with this door. On to the remaining 3 interior doors down the hallway here. Starting with this guy, the office door. This is just a standard 32 by 80, 1.75 inch thick with a 5/8 thick MDF panel in the middle. And the beauty of these interior doors is I can actually use our door stud tool and grip the bottom of it because there is no sill. It's gonna make it so much easier. In theory, these should follow the same process as our downstairs interior doors. Cutting the jambs shorter, putting the door stud tool on, getting it into place, plumbing, and fastening the other side while maintaining a consistent reveal around the door. However, things never seem to work as well in theory as they do in practice, if I've learned anything building this house. So we're gonna go ahead and montage through this, and if anything bad happens, I'll let you know.
Who's the goodest boy? Belly rip for the big boy. All done.
The ability to precisely move and tilt the door in any direction with these really help doing these solo.
That's not exactly the best position to be in. Coming out or coming in? Guess you're coming in.
How are you gonna get out?
There are quite a few methods and specialty tools to help with door installation, but this is definitely one of the more straightforward ones for a first timer like myself. Being able to hold the door open and plumb while the jamb still floats in the rough opening was also a huge help. Then once it's fastened, you can just lower and slide off the tool.
Everybody wants to be one. Just try
dog just ripped major ass.
Stop the montage! I have some lessons learned to share with you. So we've successfully installed the office and the bedroom door. The one lesson learned I have on this is about the door undercuts. Actually, not even so much the undercut, it is just cutting the jambs when you start off. So if you look closely here, there's about a 1/4 inch gap underneath this jamb. That was not intended. The intention was for the jambs to sit flat on the floor, but when I eyed this up for the first time, I saw that this floor is just slightly out of level, with this being the lower side by about 3/32 of an inch, not even an 1/8 inch really. So I thought, okay, no problem. I'll cut the jamb so that this leg is about 3/32 longer than this one. When I've been cutting these jambs down, I've been starting on the hinge side because that has no up and down play once it's set, whereas this side, I can move this up and down relative to the door to get my reveal correct. So the problem was, I went ahead and cut this one first accidentally, and I cut it to the short length, not the long length. So I had to cut the jamb to basically match this one, and I knew this was gonna be proud up off the ground. So I have a gap here, which is not that big of a deal. We're gonna have trim on either side of it, and I'm gonna take just a piece of scrap jamb material that I cut off, rip it down to this gap, which is about a 1/4 inch, and then just throw some wood glue on it, stick it in there. And then when I'm wood filling over all these holes prior to finishing, I'll go ahead and just try to sand that nice and flush, and hopefully you won't ever see it. On the door for the main bedroom, we had the opposite problem. Luckily, I didn't screw this one up. So I cut the jamb side with its proper undercut. I'm going for about a 1/4 inch undercut. I want it to be pretty close to the floor. Usually you'll see them 1/2 to 3/4 inch, but I just think that's way too big of a gap. I don't need any air movement under this door like some builds would if there's not a return duct in the bedroom, but both of the bedrooms have their own dedicated return, so the door can be shut with no worries for airflow underneath. And when I was adjusting the reveal on the inside of this door, I found that this jamb needed to be a little bit shorter than the hinge side. That was no problem. I just took shims for the appropriate gap that I wanted to cut off, put them on the floor, and then ran the multi-tool blade across to cut the bottom bit of that off, and that worked just great. Now I'm on to the last door, which is the bathroom door. I've got the hinge side fastened with 3 screws, and it's hard to tell, but the reveal on the right side of this top of the door is like an 1/8 of an inch larger than on the left. These guys are my secret weapons in determining exactly how much of a gap there is and how much you need to cut off. These are horseshoe shims, 1/16 of an inch each. This is a 3 stack, and that slides in with a little bit of play over on the top side, so that tells me that's 3/16 and change on that. And I just had a couple loose ones here. One will slide in easily. I cannot get 2 in. So that's 1/16 and change over here. So I know that there's just about an 1/8 of an inch difference. So in total, it'll take about an 1/8 of an inch off the bottom of the jamb. Well, this guy is almost tight to the rough opening up top, so I can't lift it up and get the cardboard underneath it like I could on the other door. So I'm gonna just have to be really careful that I do not hurt the floor with the multi-tool blade that's gonna be going like this. I might use the cardboard as my shim and just go like that. The line I made is from 2 shims stacked up, and that is my 1/8 inch that needs to come off. Look at that. Perfect. Doesn't get much better than that. Much, much better. That is just about perfect. Went ahead and shimmed all the rest of it up, so we are ready to fasten. When I'm getting started with the first couple shims, I put the screw below the shim so that in the case I need to adjust it, I can just back some pressure off the screw, adjust these one way or another. But then once I start getting everything established, then I'll put the screw through the shim so it holds it in place. And anywhere I don't have a screw, I'm gonna come back and hit the other side with a 16 gauge nail, just so that the shims always stay in place. And I'm not worried about these shifting around and losing straightness of the jamb when I'm taking the door on and off. Beautiful. Well, with all these shims trimmed off, we are finally ready for door trim. All the interior door work is done, and I am so stoked to see these things not leaning against the wall anymore. Big thanks again to the Door Stud for sending out a pair of their tools and this very creative shirt. If you're putting some interior doors in by yourself, you should probably get a pair. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.